We spend an incredible amount of our lives trying to build systems that force us to be good people. If you look around today, you'll see it everywhere. We write elaborate rule books, construct complex codes of conduct, and map out legal terms for almost every single human interaction. We establish compliance departments, draft corporate statements of empathy, and download apps to track our daily acts of gratitude. It's as if we believe that if we could just build a tight enough cage of regulations, we could successfully trap virtue inside it. But if you sit with that for a moment, a deeper question begins to come up. Why did we suddenly need so many guidelines just to treat each other with basic decency? What if our modern obsession with tracking, measuring, and enforcing morality isn't actually a sign of ethical progress at all? What if it's a quiet confession, a subconscious panic attack, revealing that we have already lost our way, and we are desperately trying to build a plastic imitation of something that used to happen naturally? Let's pick up a mug, clear away the noise, and read the verse. When the great Tao is forgotten, goodness and piety appear. When the body's intelligence declines, cleverness and knowledge step forth. When there is no peace in the family, familial piety begins. When the country falls into chaos, patriotism is born. Lao Tzu hits us with a paradox here that feels completely backwards to the modern mind. We are conditioned to think that a society that talks constantly about goodness, piety, and duty must be reaching its peak. But the Taoist perspective flips that entirely. It tells us that when things are running at their absolute best, we don't even talk about them. The ideal state is completely unselfconscious. Think about your own physical health. A healthy body doesn't spend its afternoon consciously reminding its heart to beat, or its lungs to pull oxygen, or its stomach to break down food. It doesn't need an instructional manual or a step-by-step checklist to survive. Everything just happens naturally through a deep, underlying, quiet intelligence. You only start researching medical text, logging symptoms, counting calories, and consulting specialists when the internal organic harmony declines. The moment health breaks down is the exact moment the rulebook appears. The same exact thing happens to the way we live and coexist. When we are deeply connected to the natural flow of life, to what Lao Tzu calls the Tao, we don't need a sign on the wall reminding us to be kind or honest. We don't need a philosophical doctrine to justify sharing food with someone who's hungry, or helping a neighbor pull their car out of a ditch. We treat each other with basic human decency simply because it's the natural, intuitive thing to do in that moment. It's as effortless as breathing. But the second the natural connection gets disrupted, the moment we separate ourselves from that organic flow, we panic. We look down, we realize that we are empty, and immediately try to construct an artificial substitute. We invent abstract doctrines of goodness and piety to patch up the deep hole where our instinct used to live. We start demanding performance because the genuine essence has evaporated. This is where we break our shins against modern life, because our entire Western culture is built almost entirely on this strategy of manufacturing substitutes. We are a society obsessed with metrics, branding, and strategic planning. We believe every human problem can be engineered away with a better system. Think about how this plays out in the corporate world. If a massive company completely loses its genuine care for its customers, it rarely stops to look inward or change its heart. Instead, the executives call a meeting, hire an expensive branding agency, and draft a mandatory 6-point customer empathy policy for its hourly customer service representatives. They print the values on shiny posters, hang them in the break room, and monitor compliance with a spreadsheet. But anyone who has ever called a customer service line knows the truth. The more the company forces its employees to read from a script of manufactured warmth, the more you can feel the absolute icy absence of real care. Lao Tzu calls this out as a symptom of a much deeper cultural decay. He points out that patriotism is born only when a country is falling apart into absolute chaos. When a society is truly healthy, peaceful, and just, people don't feel the need to wave flags frantically in their neighbors' faces, scream about loyalty on street corners, or pass laws enforcing allegiance. They just live their lives in harmony because the community works. The frantic noise of virtue signaling, the desperate demand for performative devotion, is almost always a historical warning sign. It is the unexpressed fear that the real thing has already died. We make a massive spectacle out of studying the map only when we have completely lost the actual territory. So how does an ancient insight like this change the way we walk through our lives tomorrow morning? It invites us to stop trying to force ourselves and the people around us into a rigid, hyper-analyzed mold of righteousness. It asks us to look at where we are overcompensating with rules. Think about the family dinner table. When a household is genuinely at peace, there is absolutely no need to sit the kids down and give them a stern lecture about family values, respect, or formal filial obligation. The connection is already alive in the room. It's felt in the shared laughter, the casual passing of food, the listening, and the quiet comfort of just sitting together without an agenda. But when the underlying peace cracks, when distance, resentment, or misunderstandings creep in, our modern reflex is to double down on the mechanics of duty. We start demanding respect based on titles. We enforce stiff obligations, keep track of who called whom first, and use guilt as an emotional lever to manufacture an imitation of love. Lao Tzu is begging us to drop the performance. He is telling us that you cannot cure a broken relationship by writing a stricter contract. Instead of inventing another clever rule or elaborate strategy to fix a fractured dynamic in the home, the workplace, or a marriage, you have to step back and look at the source. Stop trying to manage the symptoms with moral lectures. Focus your energy instead on tending to the quiet, unfiltered connection right underneath the nose. Clean the counter, pour the coffee, listen without planning your rebuttal, and let the artificial structures fall away. Let's circle all the way back to those heavy opening lines of the verse. When the great Tao is forgotten, goodness and piety appear. It is a profound relief to realize that true goodness doesn't require a script, a camera, an audience, or a compliance department. It doesn't need a public relations campaign. Real decency operates best in the dark, quietly doing what needs to be done without ever looking over its shoulder to see who's watching or who's printing a certificate of praise. As you finish your coffee today, maybe try letting go of just one thing: the exhausting need to prove that you are good. Not to the room, not to yourself. Just set it down quietly, the way you'd set down an empty mug. Sink back into the simple, unhurried flow of your immediate life and trust that your natural decency already knows the way home.